Welcome, everybody. It's Rucks, Mauls and Oval Balls, and we're back for episode 14 of what is undoubtedly the fans' favourite rugby podcast. And I am Dave. I am joined, as ever, by our great co-host, Rory. Rory, say hello to the listener, as you always do.
Hello, listener. Hello.
Any opening start for the listener to warm them up before I get into the inevitable?
Sit down, relax, and listen to this.
I can't wait much longer. Let's go.
Rucks, Mauls and Oval Balls, union their domain. Lots of rugby knowledge, but their banter is mundane. Rory answers questions, David has his stats. Two former front row voices, the fan zone colon flats, the DPR bar. Welcome more jouet, playing wide out the back. Alley, 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 alley. R-M-O-O, R-M-O-B,
Yes, Rory. Every single week. I look for. I don't want to belittle how much I enjoy talking to you, Rory, but I think that might be my favourite part of the record. Just putting it out there.
I'm hyped.
I'm hyped now. I'm ready to talk about some rucks. I'm ready to talk about some mauls, and I'm ready to talk about some oval balls. I don't know about you, Rory, but do you feel ready?
I mean, some bits more than others, but certainly all of the above.
All of the above. Well, as always, we need to tamper our emotions and settle ourselves down for the mundane. It's always good to start off low and build up. That's how we like to work in a nice crescendo. Mundane banter. What do you have for me?
Pretty quiet this week, David. Pretty quiet and pretty mundane in my world. Watched a lot of rugby over the weekend, and my God, it was enjoyable.
There was an awful lot of rugby on the weekend. I can only echo that sentiment of don't have a great deal to report on, and that just shows how mundane this mundane banter section has become. I also watched back-to-back games of rugby on Saturday, which was delightful. Spoiler alert, we might be talking about some of them. But in terms of mundane banter-wise, I had a lovely session at Man v Fat yesterday where I took the old GoPro.
How did Team Black get on this week?
Team Black victorious.
My God, it's our first win.
No. Well, it's our first overall win, I think, but it's our second or third win on the pitch, at least while I've been a part of. And not only did we win, we toppled the table-topping Blues 7-2, right. And yours truly scored 2 tries.
A brace from
DMJ. I've reviewed the GoPro footage. It doesn't quite, I feel, get across the pure, pace, speed, volatility of man versus fat touch rugby, but I'm hoping to really put my editing skills to the test and make it into what will be a blockbuster event. I look forward to my invite to the Cannes Film Festival once it's published, so that's something to look forward to. But yes,
I'm sure it will sit up there with the 97 Lions tour.
Building Jerusalem, Living with the Lions, my GoPro footage. It's in that bracket.
Yeah. But I look forward to reviewing it.
I'm still living off of that high, if I'm honest. A brace against Team Blue doesn't happen every week, mainly because we don't play Team Blue every week. But yeah, that's I think that's mundane banter, covered. Tick in that box, big tick in the mundane box. That's what we like to start off with. We really like to warm the listeners up to a high octane conversation. Let's summarise the podcast ahead. Basically, people, we are going to talk about the Champions Cup, and we're not going to be doing what we normally do of going through game by game by game by game. One, because there's 8 games to dissect, and I feel like we would need some sort of anthology to do that, and rugby's moving quickly. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover the results for you, just in case anyone's not aware. I'm sure you all are. But we're going to draw on some of the talking points, the themes that we really want to highlight and kind of bring to attention to the fore and have a discussion about it. Find a few areas that we agree on, find a few areas we disagree on. Once we've done that, we'll touch on the Women's Six Nations because that is back this weekend. So we're going to have a little prediction and we're going to have a talk about kind of some of the things to look out for in the games coming up in round 3. The DPFR is coming back. And yes, we are still extending that metaphor, and then we'll end with Q&A. Now, Rory, I don't know if you are feeling ready, but the menu has been placed on your table. Are you ready to start the starter?
Let's tuck in.
Let's tuck in. So we're going to start off, like as I just mentioned about 30 seconds ago. I'm just going to run you through the results. And this is the Champions Cup we're talking here. So specifically Champions Cup here. So the Friday night game, Franklin's Gardens, Northampton Saints, 46, Clermont Auvergne. A comfortable home win. Okay, spot the trend, people. Saturday, 12:30 kickoff, Toulon versus Saracens. Toulon, 72, Saracens, 42. Comfortable home win. The next kickoff, Leinster Rugby versus Harlequins. Leinster 62, Harlequins 0. Comfortable home win. The other 3 o'clock kickoff on Saturday, Cast Olympique against Benetton Rugby 39-37. Not so comfortable home win, but you know, you might get the point by now. Ignore the point I was making. Stade Rochelet, or La Rochelle, versus Munster, 24-25 to the away team. There's one for the books. Back to form, Glasgow Warriors versus Leicester Tigers, 43-19 to the home team. Comfortable home win. Sunday, Bordeaux, 43, Ulster 31. Comfortable home win, not as comfortable as it should have been. And then Toulouse Sale Sharks, again, Toulouse 38, Sale 15. I think what we're alluding to here, Rory, is potentially quite an obvious starting point. But before we get into the talking themes, let's just say where this leads us up to in the next round coming this weekend, the quarterfinals. So we've got Leinster versus Glasgow, Bordeaux versus Munster, Northampton versus Cast, and Toulon versus Toulouse. So competition's moving into the business phase, but I think round of 16 feels like a really good time to have some meaningful conversations around this competition because I think it exposes a few things.
Well, I'll tell you what it exposes immediately is that the Champions Cup is no longer an elite competition.
Elaborate.
Well, in days gone by, when we were growing up and the Heineken Cup as it was then was the premier competition, and you played every team in your pool home and away and then went into a quarter-final immediately. Every game mattered. Every result was crucial, and the first knockout game was immediately into an elite level knockout tournament. Just look at some of these results. It couldn't be more obvious that the teams that have reached the knockout phases are not the elite of the competition. You know, we can all dig out Harlequins and their flagrant disrespect to the competition by taking their first team, but it still being so vastly inferior to Leinster. But if you look at those results, it kind of deviates in terms of the seeding, doesn't it? Pretty much. The only 2 results that were close were the 2 seeds that, so Cast against Benetton,
Yeah.
and La Rochelle against Munster, were the 2 sort of middling of the seeds.
Yes.
And everything else, the seeding's completely born out of the results. It just makes that entire round pointless. It virtually just becomes like a mathematical equation of best seed smashes last seed.
Yeah, so it's like the golfing quality between, say, 4th and 5th seed from their opponents in like the 10th to 16th seed. The golfing quality between those positions in this current system is so vast, it almost makes this round just a formality. So we might as well just say, yeah, that's the result. We'll let, seed 6, 7, 8 played seed 9, 10, 11 maybe, because they're the close ones. But there's no point playing the other games, it seems.
Well, Yeah, I mean that's what's borne out from these results, isn't it? Ultimately, it's to my mind. I mean, it just the elite nature of this competition is lost by a pool system that rewards teams that go through on the back of one win to a seeding system that then has them playing a. I mean, let's be frank, it was a training run at the Aviva. It was ludicrous.
Yes, and that. So the worrying thing around that is that was a Leinster side in full flow against Harlequins, one of the Premier teams in the Premiership, and it was just a formality for Leinster. It was too easy.
After about 10 minutes, Quins didn't fire a shot.
No.
Saracens played really well in the first half, but as soon as the benches came into play, the golfing quality was comical.
Yeah. So some may say, is that just home advantage? Is that just the power of the Croke Park for Leinster? Was it the power of kind of the Stade Mayol or wherever it is Toulouse play?
Well, home advantage has always been home advantage, and that's fine. But Saracens conceded 72 points. Quins conceded 62 points.
Those are two strong arguments.
It's just, Leicester conceded 43 points.
Yeah.
And Leicester is a team that the write-ups about their next coach are claiming that their defence coach should take over because he's plugged the holes in their defence.
Yeah.
Well, they just conceded more than 40 points.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
to a Glasgow team that was missing their best players.
It wasn't the strongest Glasgow team you'll ever play.
Wasn't the strongest
Glasgow
Leicester
were
team.
good outfit. Who were Leicester missing? Chesham,
yeah.
and Montoya.
Yeah.
And Joe Hayes, maybe. But Dan Cole started. It's not like they were losing loads there.
All I'll say, Amika Iliaioni put his hand up as an individual.
Good player. Played really well. Really, really stuck his hand up on that game. One of the few that did.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm probably conflating a few different issues, right? I think you've got the issue with, are English teams good enough at the moment? I think there's a real question mark about that. And I think we're probably guilty as anyone, being quite Premiership focused, of maybe overestimating the strength of the teams in the league.
Or it's saying Northampton is the strongest team in the Premiership.
Well, possibly, but they're eighth in the league.
Yeah,
so
figure that one out.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issues. Well, there's so many issues. Obviously, Saracens had the issue with who they could select.
Yeah,
but they had effectively said, we are prioritising the league over the cup because we don't think it's worth trying to take our full outfit to Toulon. And to be honest, they were actually proved wrong by their own selection.
Yeah, because they played really well.
They played in the first half. They were fantastic. Theo Dan was
what a game,
fantastic. He looked like Shout Brits reincarnate.
Yeah, watch the top 14 clubs circle around him now to sign him up.
Well, they were saying on Toulon owner was
sniffing around,
was getting the checkbook out on the sidelines. And you think, well, if Saracens had taken their strongest squad and had them to bring on, right? And no disrespect to the players they had on the bench, but you just compare the two benches.
Well, there's that one individual, Harvey Beaton, last week was playing in the Championship, and then he gets brought in to play his first or second game ever for Saracens against Toulon.
He's up against Danny Priso. Danny Priso would not look out of place in a pantheon of heavyweight boxers.
No.
He is enormous and he is tough. And Beaton was playing against, some grizzled old stager in the Championship a week ago. It's just not. It's not a good advert.
So is that an advert for decision making in the Premiership or lack of depth in the Premiership, or both?
Well, for me, it's a sign that this round shouldn't exist. You don't need a round of 16. It's too many games.
Yeah,
and it's not elite enough. There's not enough teams in the competition.
Well, and it seems to serve no purpose.
It doesn't. Munster beating La Rochelle aside, but let's be frank, this is not the La Rochelle team of 3-4 years ago.
No,
this is a La Rochelle side that are in a
struggling,
dire state of form, and Munster beat them by a point. And great result. Don't get me wrong, and it was a very Munster performance. They were dogged and they rode their luck a little bit, and they ground out a brilliant win away at La Rochelle. But this is not La Rochelle are not Toulouse.
No, neither of those sides, and forgive me if I'm wrong, are going to go on to win it. Well, especially not La Rochelle, because they're not in it anymore.
La Rochelle certainly are. Munster, best one in the world, are not going to win this competition.
No,
and I'm willing to stake my reputation on that one.
And what a reputation that is to stake.
What a reputation it is. This entire round is a farce, as far as I'm concerned, and it detracts further from a competition that is barely comprehensible as it is. I barely understand how the leagues work in the first place to get them through. There's too many teams in the whole competition.
Yeah,
they're going to exactly the same mistake that the football have done in the Champions League. I now don't even bother watching the Champions League because I don't understand it. I don't understand what the system is. And I would normally be following that quite closely. I haven't got a clue what's going on there now.
No.
I barely understand this competition because the seedings don't make any sense to me. The way the tables work don't make any sense. And you've got teams like Ulster are in there off the back of winning one game against Exeter in their pool stages. And credit to Ulster. I thought they were actually very good, fought really well against Bordeaux, but Bordeaux were in third gear best.
Absolutely.
So
it does make you wonder. Like, I do think it really detracts from the elite nature of what this competition used to be, for sure. I remember, as you say, Heineken Cup days. You tune in, you knew it was the best players playing week in, week out against each other. It was creme de la creme. I don't remember there being games where there was 70 points getting put on a team like Saracens, who've won the competition 3 times. Let's not forget.
It's having more games for more games' sake.
Yeah,
and it's a broadcasting decision, but it's playing the short money because people aren't going to watch a competition where the games aren't competitive, or neutral certainly aren't.
No, I didn't enjoy watching Leinster versus Harlequins at all. Like, Leinster played some really lovely rugby, but like,
yeah, I could play really lovely rugby against basically mannequins in Quins shirts.
Yeah,
sorry, getting quite angry about this, but I'm actually angry. The competition that used to mean so much is just being denigrated by an organisation in the EPCR that has sacrificed what made it such a special competition just for the sake of
an extra fixture.
What? An extra fixture, they've made it incomprehensible, they made it unelite, and they've taken all the magic out of what was a brilliant competition before.
Yeah. It is hard to get excited by it at the moment. Well, so let's focus on the English team specifically. Like, why do you think, beyond the obvious, like we know the obvious salary cap, why do the English teams at the moment seem to really struggle?
Well, the best players in the English teams are typically the England internationals. The English, apart from Bath and Sale, maybe, who have larger foreign contingents or elite foreign contingents. I mean, even in both of those cases, a lot of their best players are still England internationals.
Yeah.
So you've got a group of players that are, they are fantastic players. They're playing a lot of rugby, a lot of elite level rugby in the international. A lot of them play pretty much the whole Six Nations, and even the ones that, Northampton stood their players down for a week last week, sacrificed a league match effectively to win this one. Great, that worked. But once you take away those internationals, as Saracens showed, it starts getting very threadbare. And you saw that with Northampton last week when they stood down their internationals. Suddenly, the squads get very threadbare. I think the best English lineups are very competitive at this level. But there's no ability to roll those out week on week.
Yeah.
So it's not that there's not brilliant teams in the Premiership, but brilliant squads capable of playing a whole season.
I suppose that there's not many English sides that can put Geordie Barrett on the bench, are there?
Well, I mean, Leinster's always been a mad example, right? It's ludicrous, it's in the same way the Toulouse team is ludicrous.
Yeah.
But, I'm just looking at this Toulon lineup, and Toulon aren't leveraged entirely on French internationals. So,
no.
I'll just roll some names with Vinacolo, Fainganuka, Paolo Garbisi, Carl Sinclair, David Ribbons, Lewis Ludlam, Facundo Issa.
Got a few internationals there, haven't they?
Baptiste Serran, Gavin Villiers-Tanzel, Jaminet,
Well,
Gigashvili, Lucchese, Pristo.
yeah.
And the Saracens' first team proved, or the starting lineup, for Saracens, which had enough quality in it, proved that they could not only match Toulon,
Yeah.
they were potentially better than them, and that was with still some young players. Ollie Hartley scored a really good try.
Yeah.
Angus Hall was impressive once again.
Yeah.
It's not like there aren't lots of really good players in the Premiership,
No.
but they can't do what the French teams, the Leinsters of this world can do, and roll out amazing squads week on week.
Is there also part of this? So Leinster basically rested all their players for a couple of weeks before European.
But they always do.
Exactly. So are we on a hiding to nothing, and that we are never going to be able to compete with that because our teams can't afford to rest their players like that? Glasgow similarly, because they're so tightly linked to their national teams. I also think that's a powerful aspect of it as well, because these players play with each other almost 52 weeks a year, because even when they're away on international duty, they're still building those connections. Whereas England-wise, it's, all the players come from lots of different clubs and they have to gel again, and you can tell.
Yeah, it's a massive advantage, but I mean that's an entirely different issue in terms of the national teams. In terms of the club teams, you've got this mad situation where English teams are simultaneously playing too many games and not enough games. There's too many European games
that mean nothing,
take up resources and time and money, and aren't elite and aren't worth playing, such as this round. Whilst also they don't have enough games at home to create the revenue.
Yeah, because these games they're not part of season tickets.
No.
And I don't think Premiership clubs can bank on them getting into these rounds, as we've seen. Bath didn't even make it to this round, and they're the best team in the country at the moment.
No, and to be honest, even if they got through, Saracens, Tigers, Quins wouldn't have had a home game in the next round.
No.
Sale, got a home game in the next round. They'd have all been away again.
Yeah.
There was just a sunk cost. They're not making any money out of that.
No, so I think that is the sole reason Northampton probably went for this, because they wanted another home fixture with a home fixture's load of turnover, because they need it.
It's another sign this competition doesn't work for them anymore.
Yeah,
because you don't get enough home games in the pool stages.
No, because you only get two. You only get two games,
and you don't get enough home games in the pool stages. So, but then it's not enough to concentrate on it then. And then your seeding ends up being bad even if you go through. And then it becomes not worth playing anyway, because you're playing away against a team that's vastly superior that you can't compete with.
Yeah, well, and throw into the fact, so Northampton had to travel to South Africa in the group stage. That can't have been cheap. But maybe the South African teams, now's not the time to talk about that, because, none of them bothered turning up this year.
But that's a whole other issue.
That's a whole other issue.
Basically, what they have to do is go back to the old format. That is the long and short of it. They need to go back to the old format. They need to have less Premiership sides in there. They need to have probably less French sides in there. And I realise that is going to cause a row that no one's going to win. And I'm asking for something that won't happen. But you need, let's say, 5 groups of 4, so 20 teams. Yeah. And then the 5 top seeds go through, plus the 3 best losers, as it used to be.
And you reckon it'll be 7-7-6, with the 6 being the Premiership?
At the moment, I think that makes sense, to be honest. I don't think the Premiership's strong enough to warrant having 7 teams. But then they are the strongest second strongest in terms of broadcast rights. So maybe they win that. But I realise it's, you're trying to square a pretty tough circle. But the short money says just have more fixtures, more games on telly, and you'll make more money. The long money says make a really elite competition that people really want to strive to be in and really go for, and more people will watch it. Yeah.
Is there a problem, though, if that's the route you go down, with the way things are going at the moment? Because it feels like this year we're heading to an inevitable repeat final. If we go down the route of making a really elite competition, do we ever get out of this loop of Leinster, Toulouse, maybe Bordeaux, maybe Toulon? Is there a route for an English club or another French club or another province or a Scottish club or Glasgow to really ever penetrate that realistically?
Well, it's always going to be difficult. But if you've got 3 home games in the pool stages, even if Leinster rock up, you're going to back your best team to win at home. I think you've got more opportunity for the cream to rise to the surface and the best challengers to those 2 teams in particular to have a crack at the competition off the back of a much more elite and confined pool stage.
Yeah. What about as a bit of a curveball to it? What if you just remove seedings and you just have a draw? And it means at the round of 16 you could end up with Toulouse versus Leinster. Or does that kind of make the end result more inevitable and the final takes place at the round of 16?
Well, no, I still think if you've got a round of 16, that's just going to cause you problems. I mean, I do think there has to be something that says, why are Leinster going to end up with a semi-final at the Aviva again?
Well, that's exactly. Like they have home advantage every single year because the semi-final, like the rule is that you have to host the game at a venue large enough to accommodate the crowd, but it needs to be a neutral venue, so not your own. In Ireland, there's only 2 stadiums capable of doing that. That is the Aviva and Croke Park, both stadiums that Leinster regularly use. So it's a home fixture regardless. So it does feel quite unfair that Leinster basically get a home run every single year up to the final. Maybe that's why they've lost it 3 years in a row, because they can't play away from home.
Maybe. I mean, it just feels a bit gerrymandered, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know. Thank you. I don't have like an absolute answer that fixes every issue. There's going to be problems with whatever format you choose.
Yeah. It's never going to be perfect.
I still think best worst option is the original format.
The original format felt more elite. That's for sure.
And it gave teams, it gave them 3 home games, whatever.
Yeah.
So whatever happened, it was worth this competition because you got 3 extra home receipts.
Yeah.
You also got 3 great trips for your diehard fans, and they were always good trips. Whether it's France or Ireland or Wales or Scotland or Italy, it's a great trip away. And then every game was worthwhile then as well, because even if you were going away to Leinster, if you could come away with 1 or 2 bonus points from that game, that was almost as good as a win.
Yeah.
In terms of your seeding, in terms of the final results on the table. And also it means teams like Leinster and Toulouse still have to go away from home 3 times in the pool stages. So it's not like they get a free run at it.
No. I'm very inclined to agree. I don't think this format works.
And I also think those scorelines aren't good adverts.
No, it says everything.
I think this is something that maybe the Premiership will have to, because we've enjoyed this season of the Premiership, and it's been nice to watch a lot of attacking rugby.
Yeah.
But are you starting to get the suspicion that Northern Hemisphere rugby has decided to just become Super Rugby?
Well, what was it we were saying the other day, that there's a couple of games where it feels like defence has become optional sometimes, and it seems attacking rugby is certainly the flavour of the month, and I love watching attacking rugby. Watching it.
I think it's great, and look, I don't want to discourage teams from playing attacking rugby, but you shouldn't play attacking rugby to the complete detriment of
defensive system. Yeah.
So I mean, I think some scorelines can be a bit misleading on that. Yeah, if you take the Gloucester Bristol game, everyone who watched it wouldn't have said that certainly Gloucester put a big effort into their defensive system, but they did still let in 4 tries.
Yeah, maybe
that does end up being a side effect of playing this type of game. But I mean, 72-42.
That's absolute nonsense. In an elite competition, 72-42. That's what? So that's 114 points in 80 minutes of rugby.
I mean, it just doesn't look right to me. It doesn't. No. It doesn't look right. It doesn't feel right that is a
Champions Cup. You want every game to feel like a knockout game. We always talk about knockout rugby, and teams are you always say in the run up to a World Cup, you want to see your national team practicing for knockout rugby, so they're taking the 3 points when they need to, just to make sure the scoreboard's ticking over, because you never know what happens in knockout rugby. it feels like at the moment, for some teams at least, it's just how many points can we score this week. It doesn't matter how many we concede because we're going to score more than you, which on one hand is entertaining.
Yeah, but it also, I feel like it reduces the relative value of an aesthetically brilliant try. Yeah. Because if you've got, more than 10 of those in a game, it's like watching the NBA. It's like suddenly an amazing 3-point shot feels quite meaningless because I've seen 10 of them already in this match.
So what you're saying is Steph Curry, we're getting the Steph Curry impact in the Championship Rugby because now you just expect 3-pointers every single minute.
Well, I start to value an amazing try less because in the back of the mind, suddenly you start thinking, well, yeah, but wasn't it mostly just looking amazing because they missed 4 tackles that they should have made?
Yeah. All I can say is we are definitely probably the only podcast out there moaning about the attacking flair that is on display. But you have to remember, we are props. We want to see the attritional games for the purists, of which there weren't really any. La Rochelle Munster was close to it, but
go back to that last World Cup. To the last World Cup. What were the best games to watch?
The close ones.
The ones that were really, really tense.
Wales, Fiji.
England, South Africa in the semi-final. South Africa, Ireland.
Yeah.
France, South Africa. None of those games were settled by more than a few points.
No, what makes a spectacle or what makes entertainment is peril and of competition. If it becomes a foregone conclusion, which is kind of what this competition is turning into, like you talk to people even at the group stages saying, "Oh, what's the point?" Because Toulouse and Leinster, it's going to be the final between Toulouse and Leinster anyway. It becomes a foregone conclusion. People will switch off. People will stop watching, and they'll look for those competitive, close things elsewhere. And that's how you lose fans. That's how you lose people interested in the sport.
So, look, I'll, not breaking the fourth wall here. No surprise. I watched the Gloucester game.
Fourth wall crumbled.
Montpellier 17, Gloucester 24.
Close game.
Gloucester scored. Really close game. Montpellier raced out to a 14-0 lead, and I thought, Christ, this is going to be one of those days, is it? And then Gloucester came right back into it. We've got a 14-0. They went 17-14 Montpellier. Gloucester managed to score again, and then a last-minute penalty to settle the tie. Yeah, a real nip and tuck match.
Well, and prior to that penalty, it was a lot of Gloucester defending to not concede those points and to keep that 7-point lead.
It was a ding dong of a game.
Yeah,
and there was some really good moments from both sides, and it was really, really competitive. And I compare that to watching the Leinster Quins game earlier in the day, and I was like, all right, even if I take my Gloucester hat and scarf and shirt and socks and underpants off for a second and stand naked and review everything as level-headedly as I can, I can tell you which of those two games was better to watch. And it wasn't the one where Leinster were tap dancing their way to the try line every 5 minutes.
No. It was interesting. I was dipping in and out. I was watching on TikTok. I don't know if you're aware of this. There's a few people that do kind of watch-alongs where there's a TikToker who's watching the game and they'll talk about the game. I've done it myself a few times. I was watching one and they just looked bored.
It is boring
because there was like, oh, Leinster have scored a try again. Oh, Leinster have scored a try again. Oh, Harlequins have dropped the ball. Leinster have scored a try again.
Who came out of that game with a Quins shirt on with any credit? Cunningham South, maybe?
Kenningham? Yeah, perhaps Kenningham. Certainly, well, none of the backs, because I don't think they fired a single shot. They stopped trying after certain, like every single play, like they were just in their own half and it was just box kick away.
It just, and don't get me wrong, I quite like the schadenfreude of Danny Wilson giving out to Saracens in the week and then they come away with a much worse result. Who was the real embarrassment between Saracens and Quins? Who knows?
Well, I certainly would back Saracens had a much better weekend than Harlequins did. There's certainly some glimmers of hope for Saracens to take away from, despite conceding 72 points, scoring 42 points against Toulon. There's still some glimmers of hope.
The first half of that match was superb.
So I had made a very strong stance prior to that game saying Saracens are not going to win this game. I was worried at half-time that I was going to have egg on my face and I was going to have to come out and make a public apology about how, no, I was wrong, Saracens won. thankfully, I knew it wasn't going to turn that way because the benches were just like astronomically different.
Yeah,
But
I don't want us to sound like Mona because we do try and be positive about the game. And
can we talk a little bit about Northampton though?
yes, let's focus on the one shining light for English rugby in the top tier competition.
Yeah.
Northampton, who put in a pretty stellar performance. Now,
They did.
I suppose some of our criticisms in terms of scorelines might also reflect on this, but this was tighter for large periods of this game than it appears with the final score.
Yes, I also feel Clermont were. I've never seen a team be so unlucky with injuries. They took quite a lot of big injuries at really bad times, a few yellow cards. It felt like one of those nights where if I was a Clermont fan, I'd be like, it's not our night tonight. Like some of the ref decisions felt a bit unfair to them. So it did feel like nothing was going Clermont's way. So like when you put that into context, Northampton probably could have scored more. You could tell that basically this is all Northampton have to play for now. And I think they have to approach each game now like it's a final. Because the second they get knocked out of this competition, what have they got to play for?
Well, that's it. And I think it showed. They're like that desperation definitely showed. You know, you could see it in, you know, the way that Pollock was taking the game, you know, as he always does, taking the game to it. But he was all over it. He was as vocal as ever. He was right up for it. But I thought all round this was a great performance in Northampton. I don't know how much further they're going to go in the competition.
So we played Cast in the group stage, and that's who we've got in the quarterfinal, and we beat them at Franklin's Gardens.
So semi-finals
probably against Leinster.
Yeah,
so that's probably
it's cast at home. I would think you've got that. You've got that pretty well. So
I think we'll get to the semis. I think we'll end up with Leinster as the semi again. So Northampton continuously seem to run into Leinster in this tournament and continuously seem to get beaten by them for reasons we've already discussed. How do you compete when you're a team like Northampton with a fraction of the budget? But yeah, I just wanted to draw because I think it's really easy as an English fan to be really negative about English rugby after a weekend like this, like how to be optimistic. And there's lots of like positive things going on in English rugby, but when your teams are getting smashed left, right and centre, it's hard to be optimistic. So that's why I just wanted to say Northampton are still in it. We still got it. And Henry Pollock, 5 turnovers.
Yeah, he was.
You don't get that many every week. That was one hell of a performance again. Lions Bolter? Question mark? We shall see.
Are we going to bring it up every week? Question mark. We shall see.
Yes, we are.
I absolute full credit to Saints on this one because I thought they were good. Hendy, the Ginger Flash, that's another magnificent step. So good to see him back on form.
I'm still unsure whether I prefer him at wing or at fullback.
Well, I think when you've got Furbank at fullback,
he's on wing.
Furbank's probably better at bringing it. And I think Rahm's actually a very good player, is underrated.
Yes,
but I don't know that he's a natural fullback in the same kind of mould. I don't think he brings other players in as well.
That's fair.
Fair enough.
I just like seeing him in space, and you get most space at fullback.
Yeah, I think. Well, I
just watching the Ginger Flash gallop after receiving a long kick. It's beautiful.
I love it.
Beautiful.
It's like seeing a deer float across the meadow. I think when you've got Furbank back in there, you'll probably revert to kind of almost like a dual fullback role with those two there, and have them sort of pivot in.
Yeah,
and actually that gives Freeman a bit more freedom to roam a bit
and keep scoring tries, which he is doing with aplomb. Yeah, I think at the moment without Furbank, you have to be a little bit more rigid in the way your back three plays because you don't have quite as much ball playing ability. No, we don't have that second playmaker, do we? And maybe that's part of I've lamented in the past about the injuries Northampton have had. I think Furbank's been one of the key ones we've been missing out on.
Yeah,
I don't think there's been a single game this season where Northampton's been able to put out their strongest team because we started off the season with Alex Mitchell's neck injury. Furbank got his arm injury. Hendy got his injury. Sam Graham's got his. And so people say, "Oh, what's happened to Northampton? They've dropped off." Like, just look at the injury, and every side's had injuries, But look at who's had those injuries and the length of them, and how they've overlapped. I think one of the reasons why we saw Northampton look so good this round is because it's one of the first times in a long time Finn Smith and Alex Mitchell have played together since, and that's in the Northampton shirt.
Key.
It's so important.
That is definitely key. I would say that there's, I think, a legitimate criticism of the lack of adaptation to those injuries. As you say, all teams have to deal with injuries, and I think Northampton have failed to adapt to the players that are on the pitch as opposed to the players.
I think that's a fair criticism. And I think that the players that have been lost, maybe we just, maybe again, this is another angle around the English teams. We can't afford to have another scrum half the quality of Alex Mitchell as a backup. Can't afford to have another fullback in the guise of George Furbank as a backup. You can't afford to carry that sort of depth in a squad to kind of cover every eventuality.
Well, unless you're Bath, of course, and then you can afford to do anything you like.
Well, they just...
As proven by their accounts this week.
Well, yes. Although we are talking European rugby and, Bath aren't involved in the Champions Cup, interesting story about their accounts that came out this week. Some people may have spotted my post around how I would be feeling a little bit uneasy with what that read to me. I'd have some nervousness, but scarily, I don't think they'll be the only club in that position, which is the scary thing.
No, they won't. They won't. I suspect Northampton, Gloucester, and maybe Leicester are the only ones who are not going to be entirely in that position.
Not the same sort of. I think they're still making losses, but I think there isn't a single deep pocket. That is the only reason that's keeping things afloat. No,
I mean, we probably shouldn't go down too deep a financial rabbit hole on it, but the news on Gloucester's accounts kind of broke before everyone else's, and everyone got quite panicky about it. But Alex Brown, the CEO, put out a pretty good statement that has laid a lot of fears on that, and I suspect there'll be a few more clubs that will need that. Because if you look at the Bath accounts, I mean, you just sort of think at some point, even Bruce Craig's going to get a bit bored of his plaything, isn't he?
Well, rich people may have very deep pockets, and it may be a plaything for them. But there comes a point where do they just want to have a £5 million black hole in their pockets every single year?
And it's a loan. It's all loan.
It's all a loan. So, it's not really a black hole. But unless he's willing to write off that amount, and the more that increases, the less likely he is to write that off. Will he want to turn around one day and say, "Don't worry about that £30 million you owe me"? I don't see that happening. I might be wrong.
I personally, I'm not letting 30 million go.
No, nor me. But yeah, that's quite a rabbit hole we could end up stumbling down there. Rugby finances, but
there's a tangential point there.
Yes,
of this, it's no surprise about Bath's squad depth, but even they couldn't keep themselves in the competition with a couple of really poor results. I suspect they'll go all out for the Challenge Cup.
Yeah.
Which is not great news for Gloucester this weekend because we go to the Rec to play them. But there you go.
Yeah, it's probably the one draw you didn't want. And again,
it could not be a worse draw.
Again, is this although this is Challenge Cup, is this also indicative of the format of these competitions not working? That the quarter-final has just thrown up a run-of-the-mill Gloucester visit down the road to Bath again, where they literally played, 3 weeks ago?
Well, also, they weren't in the Challenge Cup. They dropped down, and now we've got to go play them. Doesn't really seem very fair.
But, it does feel like it isn't working. So Rory, if you were to make one change only to the European club system and these competitions, what would be the first thing you would do?
Reduce the number of teams.
Reduce the number of teams. Is this both competitions? Champions Cup, Challenge Cup?
Yeah, I don't think you deserve to be in a European competition if you are languishing at the bottom of your league.
So you're saying just because you are in the Premiership, the top 14, the URC, that shouldn't mean you automatically qualify for European competitions.
How do you elevate the Challenge Cup to be something that people want to watch as well as the Champions Cup?
Yeah, unless there's some sort of meritocracy to it.
Yeah, you have to make it a more elite competition.
Yeah.
You only do that. There's not enough teams to do that by adding more clubs from elsewhere. You have to reduce the number of teams that are in it.
So what if we went Premiership facing? Top 4 Premiership go Champions Cup. Next 4 go Challenge Cup. The final 2, if that increases again, who knows? Tough luck.
I mean, arguably, that'd be the long-term state of where you'd want to get to. whether there's enough teams elsewhere in Europe to do that in the Champions Cup. I think Champions Cup you have to go 20 teams. So I think I would go 6 Premiership,
7 URC, 7 top 14.
Yeah, I think so. And then I would go, for practicality's sake, you've probably got to put the other 4 into the Challenge Cup at this moment in time. I don't particularly like that at the moment because I don't think it necessarily makes that a particularly elite competition. But at this point in time, that's probably what you do.
Or increase the number of clubs in the Premiership.
Well, ultimately, I think that's where we'll get to. But that's again another rabbit hole we're going to end up going down.
Yeah. Quick rabbit hole diversion. Worcester, good news.
Personally, yes, and I've really enjoyed the very salty responses on Twitter about it. It's been quite fun to watch,
and that's why I don't go on Twitter.
Yeah, I've advocated this before. I think you have to put those brands straight back in the Championship.
Yeah.
To elevate the Championship itself. So I'm absolutely on board with it.
So I saw someone made a very good point about that. Like, you have to put these clubs back in the Championship because that is the lowest form of professional rugby in this country. You can't put a professional rugby club because if they're establishing as a professional team with fully played players, you can't put them at the bottom of the National Leagues because it would become unsafe playing against amateur teams that aren't professional. So the lowest level of rugby in this country is the Championship for fully professional clubs. Also,
the investors who are there to manage and ideally get a return on having a professional rugby club aren't going to wait the 7 or 8 years it's going to take for them to get up to the Championship anyway.
No.
It's just impractical to suggest that you don't put them back in the Championship.
Yeah.
And it's good for the Championship to have them in there, and ultimately it'll be good for the Premiership to have them.
Yeah, there's a bit of buzz around the second tier now. A little bit of buzz. It's what we wanted to see. But yeah, again, rabbit hole covered. We've put a
slight diversion.
Diversion on top of that, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I would reduce the number of teams in the Champions Cup straight away and go back to the old format.
Yeah,
that'd be for me. That's the quickest fix.
So those in the offices of the EPCR, I hope you're listening because that's how you fix this problem. Win. I get it. You like the fact that Leinster get the home game every single round because is there a Irish, strong Irish presence in that forum? Maybe. But, let's return this competition to what it once was, an elite club rugby competition. I also have thoughts around, is this just setting things up to become not very important ahead of the Club World Cup that's coming in 2 years' time?
That interests me, the Club World Cup, though.
Oh, I'm interested because it's something new.
I am interested. That is definitely something I'll watch. Possibly the Club World Cup represents the first opportunity for the EPCR to amend the format of this competition and do something radical. They maybe can't do it before then, but when they've got that on the calendar, they can go, oh, well, we can't fit all of these in, so we'll have to do something radical here.
I hope so.
That maybe gives them the chance to do something. So
I hope so.
That's possibly the answer. Similarly to the Premiership couldn't really do anything until teams started dropping out, and then they could start doing something radical.
Yeah.
So ultimately, without a bit of radical change, though, I think this competition dies.
It certainly isn't appealing to me as much as it used to, and I am one of the nauseous rugby fans out there. If I'm losing interest, the casuals must be losing interest by a country mile.
I couldn't bring myself to concentrate on some of the games that I had on. Even the Glasgow Leicester game, after a while, just looked like a training run.
Yeah. The only glimmer of hope was I think Ulster and Sale put up a good fight in their games.
Yes, yeah, I thought Sale
plucky fight because it was inevitable. But
if that try hadn't been knocked off before half time and they come back out the second half 22-10 up, you maybe back them to steer a result. I mean, it's still going to be tough.
Yeah.
Maybe you should. Right, well, say you'd give them half a chance to steer that result. But yeah, what was it? 15-10 at half time.
Yeah, maybe
it's too tight.
Yeah,
much like the base for the parachutist beforehand, just too tight.
I'm sure 9 times out of 10 that parachutist hits the target every time. It's just someone put a blimmin' stadium in the way. Oh,
he was there going right. I land in stadiums all the time. The one time the cameras are on, they're never going to let me forget this.
Yeah, that was a bit of a farce, really, wasn't it? But fair
You
play.
have to get a fire engine in one time into a stadium to rescue you from the rafters,
Yeah.
and everyone's on your case.
Yeah. I wonder how he felt for 30 minutes dangling there. For, let's face it, his dear life.
Scared. I suspect.
Probably quite scared, knowing
Yeah,
that there's, 40, 50,000 people just kind of hating on him at the same time.
I think when they started dragging the bouncy castle in from the outside for him to land on, if I was him, I'd have thought, I'll be honest, none of them planned for this possibility, did they?
No. At what stage do you think, I'm going to become a meme, aren't I? Yeah, that was a moment. And maybe a lovely point to kind of round off our Champions Cup segment. Were there any other talking points around the Champions Cup you think we should cover before we segue on?
I did want to just ask you one question. When Damien Penaud runs, is he running fast?
It's a good question. He seems to...
He doesn't look like he is. And then all of a sudden, there's no one else around him.
He must have one of the longest running strides going, because what ground he covers in 4 or 5 strides is probably 10 of someone else's, and he doesn't look like he's sprinting, but for somehow
The try that he scored was a really, really good try.
Yeah,
I was watching it going, he's jogging,
yeah,
and then he's like, well, he's jogging past Mike Lowry.
yeah, and he
must be going quite fast.
and he looks like he's trying really hard to catch him.
Yeah.
And he couldn't. So yeah, Penaud's are just a bit of one of those physical freaks. I think I would not be surprised if we were to find out that he's probably got some abnormal stride length, or his legs are like 10% longer than the average leg compared to his body or something.
My theory is that there's an invisible vacuum around him, and he actually gets no wind resistance.
That makes more sense.
So he doesn't suffer from drag. He's actually an anomaly in physics.
That makes more sense than what I said, for sure. It has to be an anomaly in physics rather than a physiological kind of difference maker. It's got to be the fact that the laws of physics don't apply to Damien Penaud. At which point do you ask, how is that fair? But I'm here for it because I love watching.
Exactly.
I love.
We don't have the budget. We don't have the budget in the Premiership to create.
We're trying with Tom Curry.
Miracles.
We're trying with Tom Curry to put those stem cells in. We just need to get some of Penaud's stem cells, and then he will lose drag. I suppose another point I want to make is this year's Leinster's year now Toulouse are without Dupont? Because I do think Toulouse maybe are a gear down. And I say that's like 10th gear to 9th gear.
Yeah. Well, I think if Leinster don't win it this year, having parachuted in Jack Nienaber, RG Snyman, and Jordy Barrett.
And Rabah
Slimani. If they still can't win it, then some serious questions will have to be asked in Dublin.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. I still think Bordeaux will fancy their chances of causing an upset in this one. I actually think that Toulon might fancy it again this year. That looked a really good Toulon side to me.
Toulon looked really good. We have to remember they did concede 42 points to a good Saracen side. Let's not get the Saracens played well.
They're not infallible.
They're not infallible.
But then I saw Vainicolo running with the ball, and I was like, well, there's no one's ever going to beat him.
Yeah.
So, is it Leinster's year? Yes, probably.
I think that their only banana skin is Glasgow in the quarterfinal, because Glasgow have the number on them a little bit.
I will watch that game.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I will watch it. You know what we've been saying for the last hour. How we
not everything we said for the last year.
I'm still watching all the games. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not going anywhere, but I'd like to make a point or two.
Yeah. I'll tell you wrong. If Glasgow cause an upset in Dublin on Friday,
Saints for the title.
Wow. I'm gonna have my kilt on.
Oh, not fair. Typical Gloucester fan. Not liking us Saints.
Well, you brought it on yourselves. It's there. It's got to be their year, hasn't it?
If it isn't, there's really got to be some sort of inquest into Irish rugby and why they cannot win competitions.
Well, who else are they going to bring in at this point? Batman,
Deadpool. We're available.
Jaws.
We're available.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. No, I'm 100% available.
100% available. Not sure we'll be the difference makers we think we would be, but give it a try.
I think you'll find, David, I've been to the gym at least twice over the last week. So what more do you want from me?
What more do you want, Leinster? This guy's been to the
See
gym
that's
twice.
almost an arm.
That looks like it resembles an arm for sure. And I'm disappearing rapidly. I'm disappearing rapidly.
You are. Yeah, you're disappearing right through that gap where your bum fell off.
Oh yeah, big news in Goldstone World. I've got my big referral meeting this week for the NHS to find out when I might get it cut out.
So when are they going to sew your bum back on?
I'm hoping 4 weeks' time, but we'll see.
Wow, that is exciting.
That is exciting times. I'll keep you all up to date in mundane banter, I'm sure.
And then we can slowly watch David pile all his weight back on over the summer.
Oh, it's so true. It's so true.
Yeah.
That's definitely what's going to happen. But I've enjoyed it while it's lasted. I haven't.
Yeah.
I haven't enjoyed it at all. Oh, thanks, Rory. So do you.
Thanks, man.
Okay, I feel like we've covered Champions Cup now. We've done a solid chunk of Champions Cup. Moving on, Women's Six Nations. That's a competition that I'm going to be watching as well, Rory.
Yeah, 100%.
Although some of the themes we talked about of Champions Cup being inevitable and some high scores and that being a negative of that competition, slight contradiction. Women's Six Nations is actually really exciting and fun to watch, despite all that. You may say.
Yeah, but there's a narrative to it with the Women's Six Nations because you are seeing the uptick in the teams that have historically struggled. You're still seeing the uptick in performance, the uptick in player levels, and you are seeing that gap close. I do think that Ireland will give England a pretty stern test.
That is the game to watch this weekend. So if I was to implore anyone who's not sure about watching women's rugby, I'd encourage them to watch Ireland versus England because I think Ireland they're a vastly improving side in the women's rugby space.
Yeah, they've got some really good players. Aoife Waffer is one of my new heroes. She is just dynamite.
She absolutely incredible to watch. Really, really good fun to watch. Really, and the way she plays is like I don't know. It's just pure reckless abandon for her own physical well-being, and I'm here for it.
She's got that kind of Lewis Moody quality of just
no holds barred. No, just don't hold back.
She doesn't really care about her own health or safety,
no.
And there's something quite endearing about the back row. Yeah, just absolute face first going into, and we do say that knowing that we didn't realise at the time when Lewis Moody was chucking his face into people's boots that this was a potential issue for head trauma. We didn't know that back then.
No, yeah, but we didn't cross our minds when we were playing 3 times a week and trying to emulate that ourselves. It's fine. But yeah, so Ireland versus England for me is the fixture of the round. It'll be really interesting to see what that gap is between England, which is probably definitely is the best team in this competition, and where Ireland are, which are their 3rd or 4th. Like I'm still expecting England to win that game. But I expect Ireland to throw a fair few punches of their own.
I also think England need to be very, very clear going into that game that if they are not at their best, they are in for a tough day at the office. So this is not one to take their foot off the gas pedal for.
No.
I do think Scotland-Italy on Sunday, I suspect Scotland will still win that pretty comfortably, but that could throw up a bit of an upset as well. So that's not a full conclusion.
There's definitely potential in it. Like how Italy played in the first round. I think in the last round against Ireland, I think maybe they just had an off day. In the first round where they I thought they showed up pretty well against, an England side that had a lot of players, that had a lot to play for, to points to prove. There was moments where I was watching Italy thinking, they're pretty handy. So if I was a Scotland player, I wouldn't be taking them for granted at all.
No, they're the Italian 9. Is it Stefan? I really rate her.
Yeah. She moves the ball quickly. Like quick to the breakdown, quick distribution. Everything you want from a 9.
Yeah, no, they've got some good players in that team. So I think Scotland will have to be on it to win that one as well. So there's definitely some strong matches there.
Yeah, and France versus Wales isn't a complete dead rubber either. Wales are improving under Sean Lynn and kind of.
Well, I suspect they'll have had to do a bit of soul searching after the last game, and they'll have to come out of the blocks, all guns blazing to put any shots on France. But like you say, they've had Sean Lynn in for another couple of weeks. They'll have
another couple of weeks in
probably
camp.
Another couple of weeks in camp. They'll be a bit fitter. They'll be a bit more clear on their game plan, and their defence will be stronger. So again, that's not a you're right. That's not a dead rubber. I think France could easily suffer an upset in that one.
Yeah, if they go into that with the wrong mindset or expecting it to be easy, it could go the other way. So I think what we're saying is there's 3 games there that if the 3 on paper better teams don't approach it with the right attitude, they're all potential banana skins for them.
I agree.
Which I think that provides a good reason for anyone out there who's not sure whether they want to watch the River Six Nations to give it a go, because there is jeopardy still there, and I think there's going to be some really good rugby. I've thoroughly enjoyed the first 2 rounds so far. I think each year I watch the Women's Six Nations, I get more and more impressed with the standard of rugby that gets played. It is improving kind of year on year, and watching this England Red Roses side blossom into what is an absolutely dominant force in rugby in a World Cup year. It's good to get on board with that at this early stage, I think, and be invested in what they're doing and what they're achieving.
And for anyone who's not watching much women's rugby, this being a World Cup year, and if you look outside of the Six Nations, some of the teams they could come up against, Spain, Canada, USA, Australia. I mean, South Africa are improving, but New Zealand obviously as well, who are the other dominant force in women's rugby. It's not a foregone conclusion the Red Roses win this year, and they've had some disappointing results in tournaments where they were expected to win. They will need to keep right at the top of the game. And I think it's no surprise that Mitchell has been doing the rounds on the podcast in the last couple of weeks to keep the interest sparked in it, because there's a lot to play for this year for them.
There's a lot of expectation, a lot of pressure as well. It'll be interesting to see how they handle that, being the home team, the favourites.
Yeah.
English teams haven't necessarily done well in home World Cups in the past.
Don't remind me of that.
Yes, we all fondly, or not so fondly, remember that disaster. So by all means, take our word for it that women's rugby is worth getting on board with and investing your time in. Because I know there may be some out there who just haven't quite given it a chance yet for whatever reason. I'd implore you to. Take my word for it. It's the Rucks Balls, Oval Balls guarantee. You'll enjoy it. Moving on. It's time for something slightly different. It's the DPRFR.
Well, thank you, David. Thank you. All rise for El Presidente, please. I want this week to discuss one of the great cultural phenomenons of the DPRFR. Many people don't know this, but the Easter Island statues actually all originated in the DPRFR. You can see that by their deep-set eyes, large craniums, the furrowed brows. It's a very DPRFR look that we retain to this day. And if you want proof of this, and this is an archaeological fact, remember, this is written into the scriptures of the DPRFR, you need look no further than Toulouse to their replacement tight head, Joël Merkler.
Oh, what a cameo.
Before I go any further, if you're listening to this, just Google Joël Merkler, and before you've read his bio, I want you to take a guess at how old he is and where he's from, just by looking at his face. Have you checked? Have you got your guesses written down?
So for my inevitable social media clip here is a photo of him. Okay. Big
reveal. That is a 23-year-old Spaniard, ladies and gentlemen.
That is a man carved from DPRFR folklore, if I've ever seen it.
We made him out of our mountains.
And our mountains are jealous. What a lovely try he scored as well. What a lovely try.
Every time I see him, I laugh my head off that he is a 23-year-old Spaniard. Go and look at some other young Spaniards. They'll often be playing, other sports like football and tennis.
Yeah. Go look at a photo of Rafa Nadal when he's 23.
Yeah, and you'll understand so quickly why Joel pursued a career in rugby. It's great. For context, for anyone who hasn't Googled it yet, Joel Merkler looks a lot more like a 45-year-old Irishman.
Yeah. I think that's fair. That's absolutely
it's
fair.
phenomenal.
Yeah, it's either that or he looks like
player.
someone who's done 25 years on the circuit of World's Strongest Man.
Yeah, or, on the building site.
Or on a building site. And please don't take this as an offence, Mr. Merkler.
Oh, he is an absolute pin-up for me. He is a pin-up.
We idolise this. This is by no means meant as anything other than pure compliment.
We say this as two men with big heads and questionable physiques. It's put it this way: without the use of pharmaceuticals and gallstones, both of us would be barely fitting into.
Well,
this.
I thought you accidentally said frigeeks, and I thought that's probably a more accurate description for my physique as being a frigeek. Joel Merkler, welcome.
So, as our latest cultural artifact, Joel Merkler, welcome into the DPRFR lore.
Welcome in, Rory. This metaphor continues to amaze me. Long may it continue. So DPRFR complete. Everyone, you may step away from attention. You may, breathe out again. Stop holding your gut in. The DPRFR address to the nation is complete. And for this week, that moves us on quite swiftly to Q&A. Now, in terms of questions and answers, Rory, I think I see a question you've got in there for me.
Yeah, so I just wanted to really, I guess, to round off the discussion that we've had on this week's podcast. Just wanted your sort of quick fire opinion based on Danny Wilson, the head coach at Quins' comments last week to the media about Saracens' selection policy disrespecting the competition. I just want your final words on the matter. Who do you think actually disrespected the competition more at this weekend, Harlequins or Saracens?
So here we're talking here about a team that gave it all and left nothing left out there. They didn't leave a stone unturned in their performance compared to a side that may well have not got off the coach. Team selection aside, there's only one side that weekend who I think really did not do themselves a great deal justice. Like you say, not many come out with credit in the bank. For me, Harlequins did a bigger disservice to the competition than the Saracens. Yes, the Saracens picked a rotated side, but they didn't take their foot off the gas. They gave their all, which at the end of the day is a much better spectacle than a side turning up and not even being at the races on the day. So for me, Harlequins did the biggest disservice to the competition.
I have to agree. And I did see that Don Brown had to put out the customary post-humiliating loss statement to the fans.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think it was like 5,000 Quins fans went over to Dublin. And, Dublin's a great place to go for the weekend, whatever happens. So fair enough.
And I imagine 4,900 of them were expecting to lose. But when you go and watch your team travel, you expect your side to have travelled with you and brought the game with them. To get nilled at Leinster in that fashion really has painted a very poor picture of the Premiership competition.
On the back of that, I guess more Quins, slightly more Quins specific, because they're not a team that we've dissected at great length, actually, I don't think. They've obviously had, is it Billy Millard, the director of rugby? He's off to Connaught at the end of the season.
Yeah.
And they've had a bit of to say they've had a mixed bag of a season so far, I think would be...
fair.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But, they're billed as the great entertainers and they're billed as being this exciting team. And they do play some good rugby. At times. They looked quite stale to me. I mean, it wasn't just a bad performance. With the ball, I thought Marcus Smith looked like he had no confidence.
Yeah.
I didn't think the rest of the team were anywhere near at it. They look like a team that's quite stale at the moment.
So Chris Robshaw made an assessment in the Premier Sports studio that he thinks... So he said, Marcus Smith looks off it, and he's wondering if it's because this season he's kind of lost his identity of being the starting 10. So he's lost the 10 shirt in the England job, and he's being used as a part-time fullback 15. That's kind of happened in Harlequins, because every time an injury happens, the go-to is to move him to 15 and bring on Jamie Benson or Jared Evans. Maybe he's just lost a lot of confidence. He's lost that thing that made him stand out. And Quins, when Marcus Smith are not clicking, look stale and stagnant because Marcus Smith tries to force things and it doesn't work. Is it a surprise that the most exciting Quins have looked is when Jamie Benson was playing 10?
Yeah, they just looked a lot more cohesive. So do Quins need to make a decision that we're fully backing Marcus, and we're going to make him the standout man, and he plays 10 whatever? Is that the only way they're going to revive?
He's the poster boy of English rugby. They've got to play him, because I imagine a lot of people turn up to watch Harlequins because of Marcus Smith's being there. But, well, hypothetical. I imagine Marcus Smith's probably signed a new contract fairly recently, but if he keeps getting pushed to fullback and he wants to play 10, and another club comes calling saying, we're going to guarantee you the 10 shirt, what's he going to do? Because the longer he's in this cycle of getting moved to fullback, the further that strengthens the argument that he's not the starting 10 for England.
Yeah.
Where he looks at Finn Smith, there's no question mark about where he plays.
No.
You look at Finn Russell, there's no question mark over where he plays. So the best 10s in the world, there's no question marks over where they play.
I think Quins need to just fully all in on Marcus. He is our 10. We're not moving him.
They do, and they need to link him up with Ben Waghorn and Oscar Beard in the centres and get them working cohesively as a 10, 12, 13, because the ceiling on that partnership is so high. If they get it right and they're all on the same page, there's a lot of good things that could happen there. I just feel this chopping and changing, and I think they've been getting unlucky with injuries. It seems like every single game while they're doing a 6-2 split, they seem to get an injury to one of the back threes, which is what's forcing their hand.
Can I make one suggestion on that and maybe not do a 6-2 split?
There's an idea. There's an idea.
You don't have to do a 6-2 split just because it's vogue at the moment.
No. Well, quite right. But that's the thing. They do 6-2 split and they usually put a centre on, so it's because they know Marcus Smith covers the fullback position. Yeah. So Harlequins has been a really odd one this season, I think. They're not at the races in some games, and in some games they look fantastic. If I was a Quins fan, I'm still optimistic about the future, because they do have a lot of really great young players. Yeah. And we've named a couple several times over this podcast, but something this year in particular isn't quite right. And I think it does stem from Marcus Smith losing confidence and losing that security of being the starting 10. Like, this is the only year we've kind of seen him getting moved around. It can't be good. It can't be good for your ego, your confidence.
No. You see, they hooked Will Evans after about half an hour.
Yeah, there's some brutal tactical decisions being made in that team.
I just don't think something feels very not right at Quins to me.
Yeah. So is that connected to Millard leaving? I don't know. I've got no intel on the fact, so that's just kind of speculation, really. But it's definitely an interesting one. And if I was Danny Wilson, I probably wouldn't be throwing out too many more criticisms of other English clubs, if you haven't got your own house in order.
Yeah, I agree.
But hey, you're welcome to come on the podcast and tell us otherwise.
Open invitation.
And that open invitation is to anyone. So get in touch with us on our social media channels. We're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we're on YouTube, we have a Discord channel. Get in touch with us. We have our email account. We have ruxballs@outlook.com. We are here. We are open to ideas. We're open to suggestions. We've got lots of fun things we want to get worked on over the summer period. And we want to hear fans' thoughts and opinions on stuff. So yeah, get in touch with us. If you've listened to us to this point, why not just drop us a little email to say hello? Drop us a little message. We love it. We're here for it.
Why not?
Why not? So before I bring this episode to a close, Rory, I always like to ask you for any final words, and you generally provide some really insightful chants, phrases, monikers. Got anything this week for the listener before I run the jingle for the 14th time at the end of an episode?
Joel, I'm sorry about what I said. I actually think you're really, really handsome.
And that's the end of episode 14 of Rucks, Mauls and Oval Balls. And have no fear, we're going to be back next week with episode 15. I cannot wait. It's only going to be 7 days away. Cannot wait. See you then.